Dutch, French, and German immigrants. About 20 inherited disorders. What does that mean? Let's try to see this example so that it makes it clear. Do you know of Amish people? Have you heard of Amish? Where do they live in US?
Kind of up north.
Midwest, Pennsylvania, all those places, right?
Indiana.
So the Amish are a very close-knit community. They don't want to mix with other people from outside. They want to marry within the community and so on. So this particular group was, they are all descendants from about 30 Swiss founders who came from Europe, and they created their community. Now these people are very, they don't want to use any modern technology, right? So they want to live like old-fashioned way. The problem is because there's so much inbreeding, one of the founders of this particular community had a disease, genetic disorder, okay, the Ellis Van Creveld syndrome, which leads to polydactyly. Polydactyly means more fingers and toes than the 5 that we have, okay. Now, because of this inbreeding, a lot of the descendants, a lot of the Amish people in this group, they have, they are homozygous for this syndrome. Remember what happens when a trait becomes recessive homozygous? It expresses, right? If it is heterozygous, one good allele can mask the effect of the one defective allele. But once it has become homozygous, both the defective alleles are getting expressed. So most people will show this kind of problem. So this is what happens. This is a founder effect. This is a genetic drift effect, small. Or population bottlenecks. This occurs when a large population is drastically reduced in size. For example, let's say before hunting, before poaching, before natural disasters, in a forest in Africa, let us assume, the population of cheetahs was large, okay? And if you looked at all the cheetahs in that population, and if you look at all their genes, this was the gene pool from A through Z. All of the genes were present. Then came a time when people started hunting, okay, poaching, and whatever due to natural disasters and whatever forest deforestation, urbanization and all. So this was the bottleneck when the population was drastically reduced. Now when the population was drastically reduced, a lot of the cheetahs died or were killed, hunted. Now out of the remaining cheetahs, when people suddenly become aware, oh, we need to conserve, we need to save the cheetahs. So when they counted, there were probably, let's say, 400 cheetahs, and the only cheetahs that were left had only this gene pool. Do you find the A gene here? Do you find the B gene here? Do you find the C gene here? All those genes are gone. Now they have only this is the gene pool. And when they have been trying to increase the population of the cheetahs, can they ever get back A, B, C gene? Those are lost forever. So now although we have been successful in increasing the population of this particular animal, however, even with that, you see it is the same genes that are now present in this surviving population that is being increased. We can never recover, let's say, the Z gene, the X gene, the Y gene, and so on. This is called a bottleneck effect. This was very pronounced in small population. So this is about genetic drift. So will you remember the pinky finger as genetic drift? Now we move to the ring finger, which is the non-random mating. As per Hardy and Weinberg, for a population to be in equilibrium, it has to be very, very ideal population, and mating will be random. Meaning kind of, for which which never happens. Do you just walk into a room and see a group of people and do, randomly, okay, this is going to be my life partner? We don't do that. Are we crazy? We don't do that, right? We choose our life partners, our spouses, our husbands and wives and so on. So can mating be totally random even in animal kingdom? I don't know if you've seen National Geographic or other videos. You see carnivores, lion, and tigers and whatever. Do you see how the lioness is very careful in choosing the mate? Right? So human beings are one of the classic examples. Can there ever be just totally random mating where you close your eyes and randomly choose someone? No. That means mating is always random. So remember ring finger as mating. So population evolution occurred because mating was non-random. If mating was perfectly random, 100% random, then the population would be in equilibrium, right? So what are the traits that influence, that control our mate. It could be religious reason, it could be cultural reason, it could be somebody with the same hobbies and choices, it could be the same language, a lot of the time intelligence and shared interests. Research has shown that tall people prefer tall people, okay, for meeting. Research has shown people with certain IQ levels, they prefer people with the similar kind of IQ, intelligence, because of course you get attracted to a person. It may be initially a physical attraction, but then later on you have to talk to that person, right? And you have to spend hours talking to that person. So if the person is not at your intelligence level, does not share your interests, it would be very difficult for you to retain an interest in that person. So this is non-random. This is what explains here. So this could be the original population with the very ideal population frequency. However, non-random mating is occurring. Let's say the blue triangle is mating more often. Now you look at the genotype frequency of the blue triangle, it has gone up, right? So this was non-random mating. And I've given this example. Genghis Khan did a lot of non-random mating, created a lot of descendants, right? Where in Asia you find a lot of his Y chromosome containing descendants. Now when you do inbreeding within a community, you increase the risk of recessive genetic disorders, and that's why consanguinity and endogamy, these are two terms. Consanguinity means marriage between blood relatives. In certain countries these are legally not allowed, okay? A lot of the countries do not allow it legally. However, in certain other countries, in certain cultures, this is preferred. I know Pakistan, it's preferred, or Bangladesh, a lot of, Middle Eastern countries, it is preferred. So where marriages between blood relatives or marriage within cousins, within, close community, that is called endogamy, that is preferred. It's a cultural or religious preference. So, when you do this scientifically, not from any other perspective, okay, not to be disrespectful of any culture, but scientifically, genetically, it's bad. Why? Because then you're increasing the chance of a recessive genetic disorder expressing. Then mutations, okay. Mutations, M for mutation, we are coming to this finger, M for middle finger, remember that. Mutation, no evolution is possible without mutation. Mutations are the raw materials of evolution. Please remember, how did genetic drift happen? Yes, some people died and then the population goes on, there could be mutation. So mutations are not intentionally good or bad, okay? Most mutations are actually neutral, silent, they do not have effect. Now mutations need to be paired with another factor, okay, such as genetic drift, such as natural selection, to be able to show its effect. So remember, mutations are not intentional, mutations are random. Mutations can be good, mutations can be bad, most mutations can have no effect, neutral mutations, and they need another factor to help them. For example, you see here again, from original population, mutation occurred, 2 has become, the blue triangle has become yellow square, the green diamond has become yellow square. So now look at the change in the gene pool. So mutations coupled with natural selection are the most important driving force behind evolution. How did the giraffe get the long neck? Some giraffes got a random mutation which made their neck longer, right? Then was that mutation just sufficient to give make all the giraffes with long necks? No, natural selection favored it. Why? Because those giraffes could eat more. Simple. So nature favored it. So those giraffes survived more. So sometimes you see harmful recessive alleles are maintained in heterozygotes and are reintroduced by mutations. We will see that later on. The next one is this forefinger. So we've done small, pinky finger is genetic drift. Ring finger is non-random mating, middle finger is mutation. Now we are moving on to our index finger. We usually use our index finger to point in directions. Like, did you see her? Yeah, she went in that direction, okay? Or he is just coming here. So that's why this finger I'm using to help you remember migration, emigration and immigration. For an ideal population, for no evolution to occur, that means for genetic equilibrium, a population has to maintain the exact same number of members exact same number of individuals all the time. But is that possible? Is nobody going to die in that population? Is it always that if the village has 100 people, if 2 people die, only 2 babies will be born? Is that always maintained? No. There could be 3 people dying, 7 new babies being born, right? Or there could be some people migrating out of the village to go and live in the neighboring village. So they have emigrated, moved out. Or there could be 5 people coming in from another town and settling down in this village. So they have immigrated. So when people are moving in and moving out, so immigration and emigration, then that again changes or alters the allele frequencies. So that was index finger. The last one, thumb. But how do you say, how did it go? When I say give me thumbs up, thumbs down, sideways, right? So what does thumbs up mean to you? It went well. So nature gives a thumbs up or a thumbs down to changes. So just like that example of the giraffe's neck, if a mutation is favoring a population, then nature will give a thumbs up to that mutation. If a mutation is adversely affecting a population, nature will give a thumbs down. Now, what is it that nature is looking at? What is the criteria for the thumbs up and the thumbs down? First, survival. Second, reproduction. That's the only thing that nature is concerned about. The survival of the population as a whole, not just 1 or 2 individuals, and the reproductive success of the population as a whole, how well that population is reproducing. So if a mutation is helping a population to survive, nature will give, class, thumbs up or thumbs down? Thumbs up. So negative selection and positive selection. Negative selection means the thumbs down. The positive means thumbs up. Example, natives of Tibetan highlands have SNPs that enable them to survive in thin air. Remember the assignment that you got, in the discussion assignment? As to you live in India, your friend lives in. So, what was the difference between a person living in Colorado for, let's say, 20 years and a Sherpa living in Tibet whose generations have lived in Tibet for like 400 years? What is the difference anatomically? So for your friend in Colorado, it is a temporary increase in RBCs. That person is acclimatized to living in high altitudes. But for this Sherpa, whose generations have survived in the very, very high elevations of Himalayas, they have undergone genetic changes, mutations, and actually they don't have increased RBCs. No, because increased RBCs always bring in the risk of low, because the blood becomes viscous, right? So there's a problem of clogging. But they have SNPs, mutations, genetic changes that help them to survive. So this is what shows natural selection. Now let's recap all the 5 features, and you are going to tell me. I'm not going to say. What does this pinky finger tell you? What's the factor number 1?
Genetic drift.
Genetic drift. What is this one? Non-random mating. What's this one?
Migration.
Mutation. Mutation. What's this one?
Migration.
Migration. And this one? Natural selection, right? So all these 5 factors. Now you tell me, is any of these factors, if even one of these factors happens, then as per Hardy and Weinberg, evolution is bound to happen. Can you stop mutation? Can you stop mutation from happening? Maybe induced mutation, that is, from artificial sources. But what about the spontaneous mutations that occur every time DNA replicates? You cannot stop it. If you cannot stop mutation, you cannot stop evolution. If you cannot stop genetic drift, you cannot stop migration, you cannot stop evolution. Now, natural selection, artificial selection also, Darwin talked about it, the selective breeding of domesticated plants and animals to promote the occurrence of desirable traits in the offsprings. You know how dog breeds, we have artificially selected, right? We have taken this trait from this particular breed, this trait from this particular breed, and we have created these new breeds of dogs that we usually keep at home, domesticated dogs. That's artificial selection. So natural selection, please remember, is not goal directed. It does not lead to perfectly adapted organisms. Why? Because there's nothing as perfect. What is good now may not be as favorable tomorrow. Remember, during industrial revolution, You know, an industrial revolution occurred in Europe, in UK, right? You know of this? When suddenly factories and all these things came up. So what happened was, there's a particular moth, I'm forgetting the name, there's a particular moth that lives in UK, and the moth comes in two varieties, the light variety, the white version, and the dark version, the black version, okay? Before industrial revolution, because in UK winter, it's all snow everywhere. So when the moths, the light colored moths had a survival advantage over the dark colored ones because they could camouflage with the white snow. So when they are sitting on the tree bark, nobody could see them. The birds could not see them and could not eat the white moths because they were camouflaged. They could hide, they could blend in with the background. The dark moths were at a disadvantage because the birds could see the black colored moths against the white background of the snow and they would come and eat it. So the population of white moths was much larger than the population of black moths. Now time changes. Industrial revolution occurs. So when industrial revolution occurs, factories come up. When factories come up, a lot of smoke being, a lot of smoke coming out from the chimneys, and all that smoke created a lot of soot. The soot would settle down on the tree barks. Now the trees, instead of being white, became black. Now once they became black, now who has the evolutionary survival advantage? Is it the white moths or the black moths? The black moths. So scientists saw a change in the population survival. Now the population of the black moths started becoming, started getting bigger, and they became larger than the white moths. So it may be different in different circumstances. And that is why sexual reproduction, you've covered this in previous topics, helps us with creating variety. How did we survive COVID? Because we are so genetically diverse, right? Some of us have stronger immunity, some of us have less stronger immunity, and so on. So what creates this genetic variety? It's crossing over, it's random fertilization, and it is independent assortment of chromosomes. Two terms which you already know. Gene pool means the sum total of all the genes in a population. So here a population showing two varieties of colors. Now this is the mathematical formula for the genotype frequencies as per Hardy-Weinberg equilibrium. We are not going into the details of the mathematical derivation. Just memorize this formula for now. P squared plus 2pq plus q squared equals 1, where p squared is the dominant homozygous genotype, q squared is the recessive homozygous. You guys remember all these terms from the last module? Recessive, homozygous, heterozygous, right? We've covered all of these. And this is the heterozygotes, 2pq, where what is p and q? P and q are the allele frequencies. That means think of it as two traits are the capital T and the small t, the tall height and the short height. So the frequency of the tall allele is, let's say, p. The frequency of the short height allele is q. So what would be mathematically, and we do calculate, you can calculate using Hardy-Weinberg. If somebody tells you, we do solve problems in genetics using this particular formula, and that, that equation p plus q equals 1. Okay, Hardy-Weinberg equilibrium. What is microevolution? Generation to generation change in allele frequencies of a population is, is evolution viewed on the smallest scale. So that's why it is called as micro. Micro means small evolution. Now this one is a good video. Let's see this.
Variation is found in human populations and in other populations, such as this population of island beetles. Color in these beetles is determined by different versions of a gene, different alleles. Green is the dominant trait, so green beetles have two green alleles, or a green allele and a brown allele. Brown beetles have two brown alleles. By counting the brown alleles and green alleles, we can calculate that this population has 30% brown alleles and 70% green alleles. The frequency of brown alleles is greater than the frequency of brown beetles because some green beetles have a brown allele. Allele frequencies change as populations evolve. What causes populations to evolve? The island is suffering from a drought, And in this dry environment, brown beetles are better camouflaged than green beetles. Birds are more likely to see and eat green beetles. Over time, brown beetles survive and reproduce more than green beetles. This is an example of natural selection. Individuals with inherited traits better suited to their environment survive and produce more offspring than other individuals. Here, natural selection causes the frequency of the brown allele to increase. Through natural selection, the population has become better adapted to its new environment. Genetic drift occurs when populations evolve due to chance events. Let's see how genetic drift affects this small population of beetles. Chance constantly affects which beetles actually reproduce and which of their alleles they pass on. In a small population, chance events produce large fluctuations in allele frequencies from one generation to the next. Here, the frequency of the brown allele has decreased to 0, and the population is left with only green beetles. Genetic drift also occurs in large populations. But in a large population, genetic drift has less effect because it causes much smaller fluctuations in allele frequencies. Other random events can also lead to genetic drift. By chance, this volcano kills more brown beetles than green beetles, causing the frequency of the green allele to increase. Gene flow describes evolution due to individuals moving into or out of a population. When green and brown beetles migrate into the all-green population, the frequency of the brown allele increases. Natural selection, genetic drift, and gene flow are the major mechanisms responsible for the evolution of all populations. Together, they shape populations of beetles as well as humans.
So, evolutionary fitness, commonly we say, Darwin said, struggle for existence, survival of the fittest, right? That's the phrase we use, that there is a struggle for existence going on, and the one who's fittest will survive, will outlive the others. So survival of the fittest is actually misleading if we think of it as a head-to-head competition between individuals. It's not like that, okay? It's a multi-layered process. So reproductive success is the key to evolutionary success. Remember, nature is only looking at two things: efficient reproduction and fitness, that means survival. This is the contribution of an individual makes to the gene pool. So Darwin studied these finches, okay? There are some finches, there are some birds, and he was looking at the beaks of these finches to make use of the diverse foods in new environment. So for 40 years, this particular couple, Peter and Rosemary Grant, they are ecologists, they also went to the islands, Galapagos Islands, and they studied Darwin's finches, and they worked on the hypothesis that the beak of this particular kind of finch, medium ground finch, changed in response to changes in the available food. And I don't even have to explain in details. You yourself can imagine, depending on the nature of the food available, if a bird is insectivorous, that means it's eating insects, compared to a bird that's eating seeds, the beak shape, the beak size, the strength of the beak varies. Okay, that will vary. Sexual selection, sexual dimorphism, sexual selection and sexual dimorphism both help in evolution just because it gives us genetic diversity. Now, usually what happens during natural selection is these three types of outcomes are possible: directional, disruptive, or stabilizing selection. That means, let's say if this was the original population, if you graph them like here, if there is directional selection, natural selection is going in one direction, then you see that the new population which is evolving is moving. This was the original graph, now the graph has moved. This is an evolved population. for disruptive selection, the original population had two different kinds of morphologies or phenotypes, and this new selection is kind of in between these two. So one population had dark brown fur, black fur, the other population had, let's say, white fur. So now the natural selection is causing the new population to have in between grayish fur, kind of like that. While stabilizing selection, you see here, stays here the same but spreads out more. Okay, that is a stabilizing selection. Now, example of antibiotic resistant. You know, nowadays a lot of patients, when they go to ICUs, antibiotics do not work. Why? Because human beings, we are getting resistant to antibiotics. How is that happening? Can you think of can you use the same analogy as that I showed you in mosquitoes? Why are we becoming resistant to antibiotics? Overuse, abuse of antibiotics. So let's say I do not, or I'm suffering from a viral disease, but I was given an antibiotic. Now what happens is there were bacteria in my body. Some of them might have had a random mutation which made them resistant to that particular antibiotic. Now the antibiotic goes in and kills all the sensitive bacteria. Now what is remaining? The resistant bacteria. Which bacteria is going to reproduce and produce a huge population? The antibiotic resistant one. And not only in my body, it is not only when you abuse or overuse an antibiotic, you're not only harming or adversely affecting yourself, but others in the community. Why? Because those bacteria will spread from my body to others and give others also in the community a population of antibiotic resistant bacteria. That means now anybody in the community becomes sick and doctors try to give antibiotics, those antibiotics will not work. Clear? Okay, we are done with this.